Educator Effectiveness Committee. I call this meeting to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Dr. Bopey? Mr. Castillo? Dr. Davis?
Here. Yes.
Ms. Ellis?
Here.
Mr. Garvey?
Here.
Ms. Holloway? Mr. Mallory?
Here.
Mr. Morris? Ms. Orange-Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Rock? Ms. Boucher? Ms. Bonifaz? Not ready. We have a quorum.
All right, first item, please. Your first item is on page 1, item 2.1, consideration of an update report regarding the teacher recruitment, retention, and recovery task force.
The recommendation was to defer, but we're going to discuss it, so we need a recommendation to see if we defer.
Okay, Dr. Davis. Okay. Who wants to start? I have a question about, I guess, the timeline here. So I see that the task force doesn't meet until March, and so the plan is to bring an update to the April meeting. And I guess my concern would be that I think it's April the 18th is the deadline for bills to be introduced for this next session. And so I'm curious as to whether or not the department has any idea whether or not they have a legislator that might be willing to file a bill that late that might address some changes to statute that might help solve some of our certification problems. Have we thought about that at all? I don't know if we need to bring Ethan. I'm not here right now.
That could be a challenge, locating a legislator in April, yes.
Right. And so I guess there's no way for the department outside of the meeting with the task force to investigate any possible tweaks or changes that need to be made to the certification process to help us with the backlog that we've been having.
So yes, I mean, we are in the process now of looking at a number of different options relative to the applications that are coming in. Just, you know, as of, for instance, over the last 10 years, applications have gone from like 20,000 to 40,000 a year because of all the additional opportunities for endorsements and things that the board has created over the last 10 years. So we very much right now in the process of reviewing all of that to see are there possibilities to ease some of that burden.
So it is possible that the issues relating to the missing evaluations might be addressed legislatively even without the task force meeting? Is there a potential for that?
I mean, that's not something right now internally that we are pursuing. We certainly could add that to what we are looking at internally in terms of consideration.
Well, I guess then could I ask, related to the missing evaluation delaying certification, at the March meeting, can we get an update on the number of people that are dealing with certification issues because of that missing evaluation?
Yeah.
So that if we get that number and it is a substantially high number, that then we can perhaps, even though it's late, try to figure out someone who might be able to address that statutory language issue to help us fix that barrier.
Sure. Happy to do that.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Yes, and so while we're on this issue of certifications, Superintendent Bromley, I think you mentioned the other day, and I wanted to make sure we mentioned it if we haven't already, the delays are not involving, or to any significant extent, brand new teachers, getting them into the classroom. It's add-on certificates mostly.
Yes, sir. So we made a shift a couple of months ago, give or take, and started to prioritize those individuals who were trying to become initial teachers. And so, like, even when I testified at Senate Ed a couple of weeks ago, on that day, I want to say there were roughly 50 applicants for initial certification of teachers, and what our promise was on that day if those teachers had everything that they need, then we would be able to, certify them by the end of that day. And we were able to complete that task for those teachers who had everything on file. It's like less than 1% of that number that are actually people who are trying to become first-time initial teachers. Now, you also have TATs and OPATs and those type of things, but it's that initial certification through those more traditional pathways that we've been able to really reduce that number. One of the most significant areas where volume has increased has been the early childhood certificate, which previously did not exist. And so that exists now, and that just creates additional volume. And like you've heard me say several times already, the staff for that department was cut in half over that same time. So you have double the applications, half the staff. And so we're working on some efficiencies right now, and I think we're going to work our way out of it fairly soon.
And even the early childhood, that's not delaying teachers from getting into the early childhood classrooms?
No, that has to do with, we had to process those because there's tax credits involved for some of those individuals who hold those certifications. So we had to process those like by the end of the calendar year. So they had to have some level of priority too. But again, those are being processed. We're also working on writing new standard operating procedures for all the certifications. I also think that, we need to be looking at bureaucracies that exist, deregulation opportunities that are available to this board. And so we are looking at those things right now.
Thank you.
Dr. Davis?
And I'd just like to say I watched your testimony at that committee, and I thought you did a really good job of hammering in those points and then also illustrating that budget cuts have consequences without saying budget cuts have consequences. It's very masterful.
Do we need to direct the board to say anything about this March update? No? No, okay. All right, public comments? No? All right, next item.
The next item is on page 2, item 3.1, consideration of an update report regarding the teacher exit interview system. The department recommendation is to receive the report and ratify the report submitted to the Senate and House Committees on Education on January 15, 2023.
All right, can I get a motion? Dr. Bogan? Second, Mr. Miller? Any comments? Comment card? Any comments before we?
I would just like to say, the teacher exit survey is where when we ask teachers why they are leaving the system, and we ask them a question that illustrates whether or not they're dissatisfied with district level policies. And I think it was a couple of years ago I asked that we also add a question that indicates teacher dissatisfaction with state level policies, and it's never been added. I mean, I think that there are lots of things that we do in the state of Louisiana at the state level that might lead to teachers leaving the profession, and we don't have a measure of that. All we have is a question asking them if they're dissatisfied with what's going on with their district.
Any other comments? All right, we have one comment card for Suzanne Harris, Louisiana Association of Educators, and she wishes to speak.
Good afternoon. Suzanne Harris, Louisiana Association of Educators. It just seems as part of this report, something that really stood out is the number of people who are leaving because they're dissatisfied with policies. As Dr. Davis was just referencing, it's doubled in the last year. So among other reasons for teachers leaving, it might be a good time for us to investigate instituting a climate culture survey where we can find out maybe more in depth of what is going on.
I can't hear on the side.
So we can find out more in depth what's going on at the local level and maybe help find what those things are so that we can address them on the front end so that we can help the teacher, some of the teachers that we have.
Thank you.
I just love that idea. I mean, I think there's something about the framing of like teachers being dissatisfied with policies, whether they be district or state, that feels just so, it feels like it's hard to wrap your arms around exactly what that would mean, when really we know that ultimately so many of our teachers are challenged by the way policies are successfully or not successfully implemented effectively, the concrete ways in which they personally are impacted by decisions made outside of their buildings or sometimes in their buildings. And many times folks, we know that research suggests that that managers are a major factor as well in why people leave roles, right? And so the question would be like, what a climate survey would even look like, how would that be administered, and how would that data actually help us better wrap our arms around something that is such an important issue to all of us.
If I may add to that, I think in one of our next presentations on the workforce report, you'll see some of the department's work to do some of that initially, but certainly there's always opportunity to do more.
Mr. Moore?
Yeah, I agree with Ms. Jones. I came in a few minutes late, so I'll not be done to do my comments. But if you look at, I looked at the graph on page 3 and again the graph on page 7. And the scale doesn't show it very clearly, but you know, the two are diverging. And curiously enough, they're diverging at both the same rate, 25% since 2014. So the number of people coming in versus the number of people going out, you know, they're totally diverging at the same time. And then if you look at the graph on page 7, the slope starts at 2014 as well. So something's happened at 2014, and the trend has continued to date, and it's got progressively worse. So again, I share Ms. Jones' concern. I support that approach. And then also, I raised this question before, going back to page 3. When I talk to representatives, legislators about my concern here, why don't we have a succession plan, you know, in the state for teachers? So for planning purposes, I'm told that other government agencies, they do have a succession plan in place to make sure we've got enough staff in specific fields to serve the public appropriately. I don't understand why something like that doesn't exist in education. I'm told it's not something that exists in a lot of other states, it does at all. But, you know, given the trends, you know, if everybody understands the problem, but I don't understand why the people that, as we are now, tracking the people leaving the profession. And there's another group that are tracking people coming into the profession, but it doesn't seem like the left hand is talking to the right hand. And we've got a forecast in place to identify some of the gaps so we don't have all these teacher vacancies. You know, I'm a substitute for the last 2 years, and when I go into the school, the best school in town, the most struggling school in town. So to one extent or the other, the situation seems to be the same. There's not enough teachers, and then there's not enough substitutes. And when you run out of substitutes, then you've got teachers that they take away the planning period so that they've got to go fill gaps where you don't have enough substitutes. And then when you run out of substitutes and you run out of teachers backing up substitutes who've already exhausted their planning period, then they move all the students to the gym or the cafeteria, and you got enough adults in there to babysit. That's not education. So I continue to voice my concern why we don't have a succession plan, something that we can put in place to forecast these gaps in advance and get a better sense of what we need to do to close those gaps. So again, I just support Ms. Jones' concern and continue to ask the question, why don't we have a succession plan? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about this. I understand this at the school level as a former principal. I understand it at the system level as an assistant superintendent and the superintendent of multiple systems. Policy matters here. Policy matters in terms of, you know, how we recruit new teachers. It matters in how we retain teachers. I think we have to do a better job of listening to teachers, not just hearing what they say, but listening to where it can make sense for us. Also, if you look at the data on the exit interviews, if you look at the percentage of the workforce that is exiting the classroom, that's really stable since 2012. There's really, you know, not a drastic change. There's an uptick. 21-22 year. But if you look at 2020, 2021, which was the pandemic year, you see that it's lower that year, significantly lower. So I think what probably happened in part is many of the people who would have ordinarily left the profession during the 2020-21 didn't, and then the following year they did, and that caused that uptick. But like some of the legislation that this board pursued and passed last year, I think is going to make a difference in the long term. There are 2 or 3 very key things I think will help, but we need to keep looking for opportunities like that to make sure that we are supplying the workforce.
Yeah, but I think that's Mr. Morris's point. We're looking at this exit information, but we've talked a lot about, we don't have as many people coming into the profession. Yeah, the colleges and universities, they're not producing graduates. We've talked about that time and time again, how we may go from a few hundred being certified down to double digits, low double digits. We've had to do our own teacher certification programs. We've done grow your own programs. We've tried to work with our high school students to open up, interest in the field of education. So you can get high school students who look at paraprofessionals, they help them grow your own. We've done our teacher certification programs. Colleges and universities are not producing. So all of these different ways that we're trying to increase incoming people, we're not getting to the levels that we used to have, or that we need. Let's put it that way, that we need. Especially in some of the more critical areas, like your maths and sciences and such, at your middle and high school levels. And you can say what you want about training and leadership pipelines or recognition programs. Compensation is the number one, I guess, in attracting new people coming in and keeping them beyond their first 5 years. Because if they can then leave you and go into the private sector or go somewhere else where you're making more money, then for many, many of our families today, and our young people more mobile than they used to be, they will make those jumps. So while we're doing many, many things to try to retain teachers, and I mean, the department has tried very hard, the districts are trying, you do have your recognition, you are doing your training, you're doing as much as you can, not that you can't do more, but getting young people to choose education as a profession is getting more and more difficult. And the biggest things that I hear, is being resigned for personal reasons. They don't want to tell you those for personal reasons. The biggest things, we're hearing all the time are compensation, and to be honest, respecting student behavior. Those are some of the big issues, or the biggest issues that you're hearing continually from teachers who are leaving, and advising young people not to go into the teaching profession. So we've got to do a tremendous amount of marketing, but we also have to make some tangible commitment to our current teachers and prospective teachers to retain and recruit out there, because the competition is large.
But we can market all day long, but if the reality is that the classroom doesn't have a condition in which a teacher feels comfortable, that doesn't matter. And so that's why this behavior piece matters. And so we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can from a policy standpoint so that teachers feel comfortable being in those classrooms and feeling that they can do the job that they were hired to do.
Yes, just a quick response to this. I appreciate Ms. Boucher's comments and agree. What I'm trying to figure out is what specifically are we asking on the surveys, and do we feel like we have the data we need to actually have and make informed insights about why teachers are staying or not staying, and how often do we review the survey questions, and is there an opportunity for this board to actually take a look at those questions and see whether or not there are areas of focus that we might want to add to better understand the experiences of our teachers. You know, I don't quote me, but this is fairly, you know, I'm not quoting this verbatim, but it wasn't it Albert Einstein who said that if he had 60 minutes to solve a problem, he would spend 59 of those minutes making sure that the question was the right question, right? So what are the questions we're asking, and do we feel like we're getting the information we absolutely need?
So on the next agenda item, we're going to talk about some of that surveying, and Ann Cooper on that team can share some of the information that we are asking.
Yes.
Chief General, I know that you work really well with Commissioner Reed and Board of Regents, and I'm just wondering, I'm going back to my succession plan question. If that's something that you can discuss with her and see if there's not some way that we can get the folks on the supply side, the folks on the demand side, you know, working this conversation together to see if we can't come up with some better means to forecast the demand, and so that we've got appropriate incentives in place to meet that demand.
So I think that is the work of the recruitment and retention task force. That's part of the work that they're doing, but we can't simply look at this as the colleges of education. That's not going to get us there. That can only be one piece of it. We have to look at, as Superintendent Boucher mentioned, some of these other opportunities that we've been pursuing that might be non-traditional. Sure, I mean, I don't know of a system leader or system HR director that is someone who graduated from a college education and wouldn't readily employ those positions. But the reality is that they're not there on the supply side like we need. So we have to pursue other policies and opportunities as well. And so all of that would have to come together, not just Commissioner Reed, but her certainly being a part of that.
I get that, and I don't want to limit the conversation just to Commissioner Reed's team and higher ed. It's obviously a bigger picture, you know, like you stated, and to your point, we get into some of the nuts and bolts and the next reports on the comments.
Okay, Mr. Harvey.
Yes, I have a question about the data. On page 2, in the second paragraph, it says, "A teacher exit data was not collected from charter schools, because those schools are not required to report this information." And so my question is which of these data, or which column is the charter school teacher information not in? Is it not in the count of teachers exiting classrooms, or charter school teachers not in the total teacher workforce?
So I don't think that that's included at all, Mr. Garvey, because like even to Dr. Davis's point about the questions we're asking, like if you look at the, let's see if I can find them, the reasons why people are leaving, like those are actually the required questions that we're supposed to ask. And so I don't think that it is included at all in terms of the charter board.
Well, I guess my real question is, for 2021-22, if we had 50,081 teachers, is that including charter school teachers?
And do you want to come up and speak to that question?
Good afternoon, Ann Cooper, LDOE. So they are included in the teacher count, but they are not included in the survey submissions from the exit survey.
The reasons for leaving, they're not
They
in
are
that?
not required to submit.
Okay, thank you.
Why could we ask them to submit?
Ms. O'Shea?
I guess the question is, why couldn't we ask them, the charters, to submit reasons that teachers are leaving their schools as well? Just to have more complete data.
I think that's something we can look at. I know that the law is really prescriptive in terms of what we ask and who we ask. So the questions that are asked in the survey are straight from the law, in addition to who collects this information. So I think that's something we should consider, is including them in this survey.
I do have a question as well. When a teacher is exiting, I'll just speak from personal experience. I have not completed very many teacher exit surveys. So what is the requirement for people to actually receive this information? So how much of this is even accurate?
So the law allows school systems to put in the system that they choose to implement this survey. So we have school systems that do it on paper when they come to HR. We have school systems that mail the survey home. We have some school systems that do it electronically. But it allows that school system to determine the way that it is implemented on their own. And then that data is then submitted to LDOE. So it varies.
Okay, but they are required to do it in some way, just how they do it.
They're required to administer it, yes.
Some people have refused to do it.
Correct.
Talking about an exit or the workforce.
Any other comments?
Well,
I think Dr. Bugby was next.
Dr. Davis can go first. I just don't want you to move on without it.
I guess like part of me thinks that and I think I voiced this as well, I think that one of the reasons that teachers click personal reasons is because of the way that the data is being collected. It's being collected by their employer. And so if we were to have a third party actually conducting the service with a greater degree of anonymity that would be ensured through that third party survey operator, that we would not only get a better response rate, but we would also get more honest answers about why they're leaving their profession.
Dr. Bugby?
So I agree with you. I think though, I don't know that putting our effort into the exit survey is going to serve our students as much as if we were to have some kind of surveys around culture and climate. Because when someone's decided to leave a job, there's not much that we can do. They've made a decision, for whatever reason they've made that decision. But I do think that there's power in knowing and being able to capture trends and to understand from a big picture point of view. So I know as a parent of public school children, I feel out surveys from the school that I'm pretty sure are required from the federal government. What the question I have, and it's because my school's a little different, we're not a traditional school, the question I have is, are there questions already built in that surveys teachers that already do around culture and climate?
So I think there's two things. I think the survey that you're referring to that goes home to parents, students also can take it, teachers can take it, that is really a school system or school decision. So a lot of our school systems are schools who are up for accreditation, or they might be a part of a process where they're doing a 5-year strategic plan renewal, implement those surveys. We at the state do not require that. The second thing is we administered a survey, as you all know, as part of the retention task force that collected the perceptions of the workforce, and we asked them questions about climate and culture. And the two top reasons why teachers are leaving are what was mentioned before, compensation and stress on the job. And so I think we're continuing to hear that again, even with the over 7,000 teachers that submitted that survey. So we've collected in that way. It was a one-time survey we did at the ask of the task force. We actually had 2 windows of submission, but that was the first time we've collected anything statewide in that manner that wasn't then connected back to their school. It came straight to a third party to get that information.
So I had an incredible work experience where I was able to work with states across the country on educator effectiveness issues. And I know Kentucky in particular, I think in Delaware did this, where they had surveys. Kentucky calls it the TEL survey, where other states had this survey where they were looking at culture and climate. I would be curious to know if places that have been tracking culture and climate are doing better. Because, I mean, one of the issues that we know is true is that it's not just Louisiana, right? Like the teacher shortage is not a Louisiana-specific reality. But I wonder if people paying attention to culture and climate have been able to be more responsive and created environments where the exit survey is not as important, right? Because I mean, we're always going to have people exiting. My goal would be for us to figure out a way to where we get ahead of that. And I think stress on the job can mean 1,000 different things, right? There's the stress on the job because of disrespect from students, or stress on the job because of your manager style, or there's lots of things that stress on the job can mean. So I know you're about to give us a more in-depth report, but I do think, one, there's probably some work around this exit survey, but 2, I think there's the bigger question of how do we truly understand, and then how are we providing information to our school systems, but then also as a board to make sure that little things that might make a big difference and could get this number down significantly, that we're actually attacking those things.
Okay. Ms. Bochet?
I just have a question. The total teacher workforce, are we looking at just classroom teachers? Are we looking at people that included, librarians, counselors, interventionists, literacy coaches? Or is it just classroom teachers that you picked up?
It's teachers as defined in the data system with that object code. So school systems could have teachers who were interventionists or could have teachers who were outside of a classroom teacher role, but it's how they are labeling teacher in their school system.
Because it just seems to me, I'm looking at the total teacher workforce year to year, and it doesn't seem to vary that much. And I know that there's an increasing demand for positions. I mean, we've added over this period of time that I'm looking at, interventionists, we've added literacy coaches, we've added computer lab people, we've added positions we didn't have 10, 12 years ago. And one of the reasons, we keep putting people, and rightly so, into these other positions that we've added, so we need more people to come in. So I'm a little concerned that I don't see, I know our district is a growing number of people. I don't know why the total workforce isn't growing, because it seems to me schools across the state are adding positions that we've never had before.
You also have a decline in enrollment of students. That's a play.
Okay, maybe so, but not to that extent, I didn't think. But that's one factor that we could have. And then to try to reduce the pupil-teacher ratio, especially at UIR schools, takes more people as well. So, I don't know, I just thought that the number being there, and this is all, so you're telling me that this is the number of teachers or anybody with an object code that we look at or something, you look at function codes, just look at object codes.
Correct, but you'll see what you're referring to in a couple places in the options that are asked. So that is correct. We are having, especially with the influx of pandemic dollars, more positions created to help with the need. So more interventionists, more literacy coaches, more instructional specialists. So on that survey, they are referring to the current position that they're in and they are exiting that role. So in the survey, they can select, I accepted another position in that school system, or I advanced to a leadership position in that school system or in the state. So you'll see those numbers there related to what you're saying in terms of additional roles.
But those additional roles are in this column, is what you're telling me, the total teacher workforce. And that's from the PEP report,
Yes.
and that's from all public schools, whether they be traditional or charter.
But correct me if I'm wrong here, on the number that shows percent of workforce exiting the classroom, that could be a classroom teacher that moved to like a literacy coach or a literacy specialist. So they would be included in that number. And so for instance, we staffed like 300 literacy coaches last year. So all of those, if they move from classroom teacher to literacy coach, would be in this percent who exited the classroom.
But the total number includes all the, it's a little bit misleading then, to an extent, because those people are still with you in your system. They're just taking on a different role. They're moving from a classroom, say, to a literacy coach or interventionist, but they're still there. They really haven't exited the system. Yeah, it's a little misleading.
Any more comments? I think we have a pretty in-depth report coming up, so let's move on to the next item.
Your next item is on page 15, item 3.2, consideration of an update report regarding the 2021-2022 workforce report. Department recommendation is to receive.
Can I get a motion? Dr. Davis? Mr. Morgan? Second.
So this is a really enlightening report, and so I've already shared that with him. She laughs at me every time, but this is an enlightening report, and so I'm glad that we're able to present it to you, and I hope that you find it enlightening. So, you want to share it?
All right, well, as you know, one of our 5 state priorities is to recruit and retain a highly effective and diverse workforce. So I'm eager to share with you our annual snapshot of our educator workforce and an update on the progress of our state's comprehensive recruitment and retention strategy. We are seeing positive results from the hard work of our school systems and stakeholders on improving our workforce. And this presentation, are y'all able to see? Oh, great, thank you. So the department began publishing state and regional workforce reports in 2016 in order to support leaders in workforce development. These annual reports used October 1 reporting data, which is generally submitted in mid-January, and offer a look at demographic and certification data down to the system level. State and regional reports are published on our Louisiana Believes website, but school system reports were sent through a secure file transfer portal. We have made improvements in the accessibility of this reporting over the past year. In 2022, workforce reporting shifted to EdLink 360, where data are available at the system and the school level. So now system and school leaders can access their workforce reporting data at any point in the year, and the data will reflect that system's latest reporting information. Our state and regional snapshots now have end-of-year data, which more accurately depicts last year's workforce. In addition to the live dashboard where systems and sites can view their workforce data in real time, LDOE will continue to publish public-facing workforce reports each year after data has been finalized for the school year. And so these reports are now called snapshot reports because they use finalized end-of-year data submitted by school systems, thus giving a snapshot of the previous academic year's workforce data for the whole state. The purpose of this snapshot is to communicate annual workforce data and trends to stakeholders and support decision-making for statewide improvements regarding recruitment and retention. It provides data in the areas you see here: demographics, certification, recruiting and hiring, evaluating results, compensation, and retention. And there's also an appendix explaining the methodology and definitions of terms in the snapshot as well. LDOE also produces 4 regional snapshots which summarize workforce data for each region. The workforce data elements are displayed in the regional snapshots that are the same as the state, but these reports disaggregate data based on that region and then they show a comparison to the state. I'm going to share with you some highlights of the statewide snapshot with you today. So the demographics at a glance section provides an overview of data that gives insight into how Louisiana's student and teacher populations are represented. In 2021-2022, Louisiana public schools were home to over 690,000 students and 50,000 teachers. 56% of the student population is students of color, 29% of the teacher population is teachers of color, 68% of the total student population is economically disadvantaged, 19% of students have disabilities, and 5% are students that are English learners. During the prior school year, there was 27% teachers of color, and that has increased by 2 percentage points, moving to more closely mirror our student population. In the Educator Workforce Overview section, demographics and certification data are displayed. The demographics here show teachers and students by race and ethnicity as well as gender. In 2021-2022, the majority of the teacher population, 71%, was white compared to 44% of our students. 29% of our educators are educators of color compared to 56% of our students. And our male and female teacher population has remained consistent since the previous year, with our workforce being predominantly female, with 81% of our teachers. These data reflect teacher certification for core classes in Louisiana traditional public schools. The data excludes charter schools, which are not required to report certification data. In 2021-2022, 69% of teachers were appropriately certified for all courses they taught. 19% of certified teachers taught out-of-field classes, and 12% were uncertified.
School,
If I could just stop right there for a moment. If we look at certified versus uncertified, and then we look at letter grades, you see an inverse, basically, relationship. As you go from A uncertified, you see 72% of teachers are certified in A school. Whenever you get some F, it's 59%. You look at, obviously, if you look at uncertified A, you see 9%, and then F, 23%, so there's a higher number of uncertified teachers in the schools. So just want to point that out.
The percent of certified teachers increased from 67% to 69% last school year, reducing our out of field and uncertified percent from 33% to 31%. Certification data is also provided by subject area. These data reflect teacher certification for core classes in Louisiana traditional public schools. Again, this data excludes charter schools. In 2021-2022, math, science, and social studies were the top 3 areas in need of appropriately certified teachers. While all 3 areas showed that 22% of classes were being taught by uncertified teachers, science had a higher percentage of teachers teaching out of field at 19%. The compensation section provides average salaries for teachers and school leaders. The average teacher salary increased by over $1,200 to $52,174 last year. These charts display retention rates and years of experience of departing teachers and school leaders. The 2021-2022 retention data uses a 2-year calculation. Therefore, this data shows how much of the 2020-2021 teacher workforce departed or was retained last year in 2021-2022. The departure and retention data for last school year will not be available until after this year's October 1 reporting deadline around February. More teachers are being retained than the previous year. Louisiana is retaining 86% of teachers, which is up 2 percentage points from the previous year. We're also retaining more first-year teachers, increasing that rate by 5 percentage points. Contrary to the data on teacher departure, only 2% of first-year school leaders departed. Retention rates are also displayed by teacher preparation pathway. So this data tracks teachers from both undergraduate or traditional programs and post-baccalaureate or alternate certification programs to their initial hiring and employment over a 3-year period. This data shows that undergraduate retention rates are higher over a 3-year period than our post-baccalaureate retention rates. We're seeing upward trends in our workforce that directly align to our vision of recruiting and retaining a highly effective and diverse workforce. This past year, we saw the percentage of teachers of color increase by 2 percentage points. The percentage of certified teachers increased by 2 percentage points. The average salary increased over $1,200, and the retention rate increased by 2 percentage points, and the first-year retention rate increased by 5 percentage points. These are early signs that our efforts, our school systems, and preparation programs are paying off, and that our comprehensive recruitment and retention strategy is in fact working. We can attribute some of that growth to school systems' investment of pandemic relief dollars on recruitment and retention stipends, professional learning supports, our recruitment and retention fellowship for our HR directors, and implementing a local recruitment and retention strategy that meets their context, and additional roles on our career ladder to help stabilize that development. With efforts focused on this plan, I expect to see an additional upward movement in these numbers next year. Now I'm going to share with you the presentation on the progress of the recruitment and retention strategy that was originally scheduled to be presented at the December joint Bessie and Board of Regents meeting, but was canceled due to the weather. In the 2021 legislative session, the Recruitment, Recovery, and Retention Task Force was created, and that task force created a comprehensive plan consisting of 28 recommendations for both LDOE and Board of Regents to implement. Last December, we released our preliminary task force report to you all. Our teams, task force, and school leaders have been busy implementing this robust plan the past year, and we're only just beginning. I'm proud of the partnership of all of our task force members and their organizations. Last year at this time, we had over 2,500 vacancies in Louisiana, and as of October, we had around 1,200. So our systems and schools are doing tremendous work to ensure that our classrooms have a teacher every day leading their classrooms. So now I'm going to highlight a few of the items from the report, but you all have access to the full report. So the first thing is the task force directed LDOE to expand the pre-educator pathway in high schools. This is to cultivate highly skilled educators beginning in high school and then extending through college and into the workforce profession. Students who are on a career or a college pathway can take courses to build an understanding of diverse learners in the learning environment. And the pathways launched in the 2021-2022 school year with implementation in 21 school systems. We allocated over $1 million for the expansion to over 90 schools across 46 school systems during this school year. We also released guidance and supports for system leaders and teacher leaders that includes learning visits across the state to learn about promising practices with other systems, statewide teacher leader curriculum training, and professional learning communities for those that are implementing the pathway to learn with and from each other. The task force also elevated the importance of having a diverse workforce, which improves the quality of education for all students. Louisiana was selected as one of 3 states to be part of the national collaborative through the American Institute for Research's Center for Great Teachers and Leaders, where we're evaluating our current and future practices to improve diversity in the workforce. Last fall, the task force studied the barrier of praxis core in recruiting teachers into the profession. This assessment is a core skills test similar to the ACT that was required to beginning a teacher preparation program. The task force reviewed data and research aligned to the barriers this assessment created and endorsed the removal of this assessment in legislation and in policy. The Praxis 2, which is the content and pedagogy assessments, remain required as they directly assess the knowledge and skills aligned to teaching. The task force also endorsed LDOE and the Board of Regents to pursue efforts to study and increase incentives and compensation for educators. This past legislative session, teachers received a $1,500 pay increase and support staff received a $750 pay increase. The legislature also improved the MFP, including a $2,000 stipend for our mentor teachers, and the Go Teach Fund was created and received a $5 million allocation to provide financial aid to those in teacher preparation programs. We're also wrapping up the first of its kind statewide comprehensive compensation and incentive study that will help us understand what this looks like across Louisiana and drive decisions for future improvements. We also expanded 2 fellowships, the Aspiring Principals Fellowship and the Recruitment and Retention Fellowship. In order to prepare future principals for success in their first year as a principal, the Aspiring Principal Fellowship supports that development. We launched a pilot last year of a cohort of about 25 individuals and then expanded that cohort this year to 50 individuals where they are learning the critical knowledge and skills to be successful day 1 of the principal role. They are learning from site visits and panels of successful principals around the state, receiving professional learning critical to the role of a school leader, and also developing a strong network of soon-to-be principals across Louisiana. We also invested in the human resources directors since they are essential in driving school and system improvement and developing a local recruitment and retention strategy that meets their needs. This fellowship allows HR directors to build their capacity in the full scale of human capital work, also exploring innovative solutions and how they can implement those solutions in their system. We now have had over 35 school systems represented in this year-long fellowship. We've also expanded reciprocity through Act 244, which removed the requirement of 1 year of successful teaching experience in state for educators that meet exam exclusion. So now teachers from outside of Louisiana who want to teach in our state that meet those requirements can now begin teaching. We also launched this past summer the New Teacher Experience, which is a comprehensive induction program that offers multiple services for our beginning teachers. This is the experience that every first-year teacher deserves and needs to be successful in those first few years. And so that includes direct teacher support, such as mentors, affinity groups, and professional learning. We're also supporting school system leaders in implementing their local induction program. We, for the first time last year, added to our awards program the New Teacher of the Year award, and then we have a summer kickoff for all of our new teachers as well, and that happened this past July. Another recommendation was to study the Educator evaluation system and develop a plan to improve that system. We are reviewing our evaluation system that was created over 10 years ago. We conducted focus groups and surveys asking for the input of educators who are evaluated by the system and those that evaluate others in this system. And the Region 14 Comprehensive Center is compiling that data into a report that should be produced in the next few weeks. And that feedback will help us understand what experiences our current educators are having and their needs for a future evaluation system. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the task force also wanted to elevate teacher voice by collecting their perspectives to understand their experience and their needs. So listening sessions and a survey was administered to collect feedback that will help us make decisions about how to support our school systems and educators. Some of the things that we've learned so far from this survey are that teachers remain in their profession because they feel effective in developing students. They also enjoy the flexible schedule that it provides. They also indicate the main reason people leave, as mentioned before, is stress and compensation. And we really want to make sure that as we finalize this report, not only are we listening to our educators, but then taking actions on what they are asking for to improve our workforce. And that report will be available this month as well. And then lastly, the last task force meeting endorsed 3 legislative actions for LDOE and Board of Regents for this coming legislative session. They endorsed the continuation of the task force, which is set to conclude this May. They also endorsed pursuing increased teacher pay, and then also supporting the Teacher Interstate Mobility Compact to improve reciprocity across states. So this report on the task force is publicly available and outlines the progress that we've made so far on this strategy. And that concludes this presentation.
Do you have any comments? Okay, Mr. Moore.
So first of all, thank you for that report, excellent report, appreciate the insightful feedback. I'm really interested in the recruitment programs that were mentioned. I go to page 14 of the handout. The first one, the pre-educator pathway, where we're creating a pathway for high school students to enter this field. Do we have a sense of how many students are showing interest here? How many are enrolled in this pathway right now?
I know we have around 500, but usually they'll start those classes their junior or senior year. So a freshman or sophomore could be interested, but won't take them until later on. So we'll see the first class or the first cohort of students graduate this year who begin their junior year, and we'll have data on that as well.
Okay, great. Look forward to hearing that. The next one,
Mr. Morris, before you go on, I just want to mention, like, to make that even better, the Go Teach Fund was passed, which allows us to scholarship those students into college, those who would like to be future educators. So
they have a great segue to my next question. So on that one, on the next page, the Go Teach Fund, the superintendent mentioned there's $5 million has been set aside. How many students have applied for that?
I would need to ask Board of Regents. I know that right now each preparation program is in the process of allocating those funds based on the amount of money they have. So we should have initial numbers, I would say, by our March task force meeting. I've talked to a few university providers already, and they have finished the process where some are still allocating. So we won't know that number for a little bit longer.
And then on the last question, in your next steps, your recommendations to the legislature, explore options for increasing teacher pay and compensation. You know, based on all the feedback you got, are you guys going to recommend a specific amount of increase for compensation that you think is going to make a difference?
I don't think that study will provide that. The purpose of that study is really to understand what compensation incentives look like statewide. Right now, we have limited data on that, but especially during the past few years with pandemic relief dollars, we don't have a good pulse on how they were spending that in terms of stipends. So I think that will be part of the report, but our vendor who's working on that is still compiling that.
Do you think there's any way that you could provide any data that would support the recommendation, you know, as opposed to, I think this is a number, is there any chance that there's any data you think that was a threshold that would make a difference? That would just be pure speculation.
I think that's the decision of the MFP task force and you all. So make a recommendation.
I would decide ultimately what the answer is, but I'm really more curious about when an individual teacher is contemplating that decision, right? How much incentive, you know, really makes a difference. If it truly is, you know, a compensation question on page 10 of the handout, you're showing the threshold between teacher, assistant principal, and principal. You and I had this conversation before. I've heard conversations with teachers where they're leaving the classroom to take an administration job in the district, right? So apparently there's a threshold there, right? It's going to drive the decision to leave the classroom to go into the district's office. So there's a threshold there. So I'm curious, you know, if we can quantify that and help folks that are making the decision with regard to what those pay increases might be, they can appreciate that.
Sure, I do know from other states across the country, what we see nationally in terms of a number that works is that it has to be significant. So for example, the states who are really seeing return on that investment are around $10,000 increases. So if, you know, $1,000 isn't really moving the needle for those states, it's pretty significant.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you not only for a comprehensive presentation, but all of the work that goes into creating what clearly is an incredibly comprehensive strategy for addressing these issues. I mean, there's so many different approaches happening in tandem with each other to address some of the outcomes, and I just want to recognize the amount of work that goes into all of that. Just a couple of key follow-ups. One is I'm particularly interested in the data, forgive me for losing this page, hold on 25 seconds, here we are. Page 21, educator workforce increasing in diversity of race and ethnicity from 27% to 29%. That is incredibly promising. This at a time where all national statistics are moving in the opposite direction, which is deeply concerning. Can you speak a little bit, one, to what that overall number represents? So in terms of actual, you know, leaders in classrooms, what is that number? And can you speak specifically to some of the strategies and tactics that you think are going into, in many ways, defying what in many other states is a really concerning trend of leaders of color, teachers of color leaving the profession and being harder to retain?
Sure. So I'm equally as excited about it. I think it's something that we've talked about with other states as well. I think one thing, or maybe the most important thing, is when hearing what other states are doing across the country, we're hearing they're doing one or two or three things. Louisiana has had national recognition of our strategy because we are doing 28 things at the same time. So we are really moving a lot at once to really see that difference. I think the thing in a few years that is really going to show in the numbers here is what the impact of the removal of Praxis 4 is doing. We already know that our HBCUs have seen increase this fall in spring in their enrollment based on the removal of this assessment. And then also our, another recommendation was around our parent-to-teacher model. We have over 700 paras in our state who are enrolled in this program. And if we have 700 more people for 4 years from now that are now teachers, that would be amazing. And we tend to see more teachers of color or more paras of color in this program, with about 50% of those candidates. So I think there's things we're doing now, we're going to see even more results in the next few years, which is really promising as
That's
well.
incredibly promising. I have a follow-up. So I still believe that school climate data could be incredibly useful. I am curious what it would take to advance that. Like, how could we get a better picture of what's actually happening in the conditions in our buildings that impact teacher retention?
So one of the recommendations is around helping school systems and school leaders improve climate and culture. The task force, and I agree, felt that in order to move that recommendation forward, we needed to get the results of that survey first. And so now that we're going to have a finalized report there, we'll have a little bit more specifics about what that means to different educators, and then to help make some decisions. I do think we've been asked multiple times for different groups on providing a statewide survey of that nature or helping school system leaders implement one, and then how do you use that data to then decide individually what each school or system needs. So I think that's on the radar for sure. We wanted to make sure that educator perception survey was finalized first, but it's part of the strategy.
Thank you. Great work.
Ms. Ellis?
Yes.
I would just encourage the task force to look at what other states have already done. You don't have to start from square one. And it'd be interesting to know if any of them are publicly available, if they were developed with race to the top dollars that might make them publicly available. And with the ultimate goal for us to increase retention over time. But I think there's also I think there are a lot of opportunities there. I think there are some tremendous school improvement opportunities as well. So I would encourage you guys to reach out and see what other states have done.
Mr. Miller?
On slide 11, where you're talking about teacher preparation, pathway retention rate, you talk about 3 years out. And I'm just curious, for purposes of this slide, does retention mean the teacher is at the school that hired them? Are they at the system? Or if they transition from one school to the other within the same system, is that considered retained? Some clarity there.
That means that they are in our current workforce. So they may have moved to a different grade or a different subject or school, but they're in our workforce.
I think Ms. Boucher brought this up. Does that include people that may have started off in a classroom and switched to reading specialist, something like that as well?
Oh, if they're retained, yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a quick one. We had already talked about this, but just for the record, I wanted to say that on page 8 of the handout, you list the classes that we have concerns about, teacher certification issues, but we had discussed also that foreign language is not listed over here. And, you know, that's gotten to the point where it's not a concern about having enough certified teachers. It's not concerned about having enough teachers. We can actually offer the classes. You know, routinely this board is opposed to the waivers that are eliminating the classes. And culture is so important in the world that we live in today, appreciation for other cultures. I think there's a strong message that's missing here, because we haven't identified foreign languages and given legislators some indication of the gap that's growing every year and gets to be a routine request before this board. So we could add that and a message that we send to the legislators. I appreciate it.
Sure, we included here the core content areas and tested grades, but we can definitely have other certified areas moving forward. I think it's a great idea.
Ms. Jones, thank you. Forgive me, I had one more note and it failed a moment ago. I'm particularly interested in how you are leveraging teacher leadership and teacher voice in how we address these particularly important issues. So can you explain a little bit about teacher leadership engagement? Do they get to help co-construct the survey questions, for example? Do they, what exactly is the role of teacher leaders in this process as we think about the myriad of solutions that are going to be needed?
Sure, so it varies based on recommendation. But an example of this would be, we used our school leaders to help us determine the topics for the Aspiring Principals Fellowship. So we heard from current principals, what would they have needed first year on the job, and that influenced those decisions. We also conducted that survey, again, to hear voices from over 7,000 educators on just the workforce in general. We use our mentor teachers, our teacher leaders of our pre-educator pathway programs, and other roles to help create new guidance documents or new supports. An example of this would be, we used about 10 school system leaders who currently had teacher induction programs to help us design our new teacher experience process. So it varies based on recommendation, but we are using them to help design or revise existing strategies.
I have a question too. We were talking about, I guess it's on page 19, slide 8, talking about science being an area where you have lots of, or lack of certification. Is there a reason for that? Is there something contributing to that besides just science? I mean, my understanding from a high school administrator perspective is they have to specialize in certain areas, and that creates another problem. Is that accurate for this?
Our math and science certification numbers have remained consistent over the past several years. That middle and high school degree and certification is not as frequent as our elementary and other grades. So it's definitely consistent. Ms. Ellis, I don't think there's anything different about that this year.
I guess my understanding was, I would want to move a science teacher from one content area to another. Let's say biology to chemistry. You can't just do that. You have to have that praxis exam in that content area. So it makes it challenging to find a chemistry teacher when they move up to an administrative position or somewhere else, because all your science teachers aren't necessarily certified in that same area. Okay, any other questions? Do we have any cards? No comment cards? No objections? All right. Next item.
The next item is on page 26, item 3.3, consideration of an update report regarding the Louisiana State Teacher of the Year Public Interest Fellowship. The department recommendation is to receive.
Can I get a motion? Ms. Holloway? Ms. Bugby?
So thank you, Ms. Ellis. Yes, I'll turn this over to Kelly Stonks from our Student System Relations team to introduce Brian and introduce the presentation.
Thank you. As Dr. Bromley said, I'm Kelly Stonks of the Office of School System Relations team, and I have the privilege of managing the Public Interest Fellowship Program. In 2018, the Louisiana Public Interest Fellowship was launched in partnership with the Louisiana Department of Education and the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. The fellowship allows for the recipient to spend the upcoming school year advocating for a key education initiative of their choosing. In August, we introduced to you our 2022 Louisiana Public Interest Fellow, Mr. Brian Goff. He is here with us today to give us an update on the progress of his fellowship. Here is Brian Goff from St. Charles Pierce.
Good afternoon. So my fellowship is focused on researching best practices for industry recruitment for internship programs. And the goal is to do some research to provide tools for school systems in the state to help with promoting their internship programs with their business partners, industry leaders. For the first half of my fellowship, I've been meeting with business professionals, including Corey Fauché, who is the St. Charles Parish Economic Development and Tourism Director, along with a lot of other people in the business community, and gathering their input in regards to internships and their thoughts and information from other business education leaders in the K through 12 area. And what's been interesting about that is it's kind of taken on my life. Everywhere I go now, I talk to the business owner, I talk to the people working there, and I ask questions. So everywhere I go now, it's become part of my research. I was able to attend the GNOU Summit, where I got to listen to a lot of key information about internships in our state and actually nationwide, and network with business and industry professionals at that time. I was actually approached by multiple, this gave me an insight. I was actually approached by multiple people during that time asking, we have a shortage of workers, how do we start an internship program? And I thought it was very interesting that you had people from the business profession coming through a K-12 person asking, how do we get workforce development going in our area? And then based on initial conversations and the networking, and looking at my past history of I've been at the Satellite Center for 18 years, career education for the last 20 years. I started asking myself, how did we build our network of people that we've built for our programs in the past? It was all project-based, and we did a lot of project work within the community. And how do we build that capacity? And one of the things that came to mind was relationships. We've made businesses feel comfortable. And so that started a discussion of how do we have other people from other schools get build that same capacity in their schools. So that led to an outline of things that we've done, which was added to by all the research that I've done and the discussions I've had with people from the business community. And GNO Inc. and Workforce NOLA has played a big part in that. For my next steps, I'll be compiling the information gathered and solidifying a list of indicators to help find successful business matches for our internship programs. I will also focus on reaching out to businesses for guidance on approaching other businesses and begin marketing our internship program for St. Charles Parish businesses. And that's actually going to be a key part of, as I sat in GNOU's summit, the thing that kept coming up was just ask businesses what they want. Ask businesses what they want, and then work with them and figure out a way that you can have a partnership. But when you get them on board, it's a little easier than just saying, here's what I want to do. And the ask is easier. At the end of my fellowship, I'll be compiling all the information to be shared with other school systems throughout Louisiana, and hopefully help some people get their programs to a higher level than they already are.
Thank you, Mr. Gall, for your dedication to your fellowship in education in Louisiana. I would also like to thank Mr. Troy Byrne from the college and career team. He's been meeting with Brian and I bi-monthly to help assist with this fellowship initiative. And I speak for all of us in saying we're looking forward to the culmination of your work.
Thank you. Any comments from the board? Okay, Ms. Becky.
I think you brought up Youth Force NOLA, and I just wanted to make sure that you were connecting with them because of the, all of the structures that they put in place around internships. I know I've looked at it from my own school, and I think that they've been able to build on other people's really good work, and so I wanted to make sure that you make that connection. And then just to say, I would love to follow up with you individually about it because it's work that I'm doing every day. And also say, I love to see this fellowship continue and to have educators have opportunities like you're having right now. If we would have done that, y'all may not have to put up with me on that.
Ms. Ellis, I'm just curious if Ms. Bonifants could vouch for this work. Is he really doing this?
Come on now.
Yeah, he really is doing it.
All right, Ms. Armstrong.
Thank you for your leadership, first and foremost, and just your commitment to service, right? This is an extension of your experience in the classroom. And I'd love to know a little bit more about how this has been for you as a leader. In what ways has going through this inquiry process and building out your own understanding of such an important initiative influence how you think about your leadership in the classroom and in the school? And what insight would you give us as we think about the many ways we want other educators to have these types of experiences?
So you asked me how the year has been. It's been interesting. I don't know if you know this, but I was actually appointed as assistant principal at elementary school about a week and a half before this. This opportunity came up. So it's been an interesting year of trying to toe the world of elementary education and, you know, the niches and learning how to be an assistant principal and learning elementary, because I've been at the high school level for so long. So it's been a challenge. I'm not gonna lie, it's been a challenge. However, the nice thing about my career is I have a lot of alumni that I've kept in touch with, and they are in the workforce. So that has actually, in a lot of them in the greater New Orleans area, but then nationwide, you know, so I've been able to reach out to them, and they've been able to do some of the legwork for me. And then I have a group of people, a core group of people working with me in the school system too, that are at the Satellite Center, that are helping develop some plans along with Ronnie Seal, so our career technical person. So it's been a collective effort, which has been nice, and I had to let go of it, otherwise I was gonna drive myself crazy. And that's not something I'm used to doing. I'm used to working on teams, but having to let go of something that's my baby has been kind of hard, but it's working that way. So I think it's an excellent opportunity for somebody in education to get an insight outside of their classroom. You know, my career has let me do that a lot in the past. However, looking at it with a different lens now, we were just looking at how do we get kids opportunities to work. In the past, this is something a little bit bigger. So understanding the big picture, understanding how it all fits together, understanding all the hurdles that are in place, and how do you overcome them. I think it helps, and then it's led to some interesting discussions at elementary education too. Where are these kids going? What, you know, when we make these decisions, you know, how is it going to drop them forward in their career, and then what do we do in between, you know, elementary, middle? It's led to some really interesting discussions across the board of how we develop, how we help a kid find out what they want to do in life and give them the tools for it.
Mr. Wall?
I visited the Satellite Center and I was very impressed. So obviously very interested in your work, which could be an extension of the Satellite Center. So I'm curious, do you come back to us again, like with your final report, number one, and then number two, when you finish your report, do you envision that as something that could be used as a model for other parts of the state?
Yes, I think I do give a report at the end. And so I will be providing that to you. As a model, that's kind of it, yes and no. I don't want to say it's a model that everybody can follow, because the needs of St. Charles Parish are going to be totally different than if you go to where my family is from. Up in, both my parents are raised in North Louisiana, Caldwell Parish. The needs of Caldwell Parish are totally different than the needs of the greater New Orleans area. So I can provide tools that hopefully, and I'll give you for instance, like one of the first things you should do is find your local economic development people and have a discussion with them. And that's free. It may cost a lot.
Universally would play anywhere in the state.
Right, so where are those, so it's kind of some tools of where can you go to find, and just to help people, because maybe not everybody has had the opportunities that I've had to, I've been given a lot of freedom to go out and travel through the nation and you know, started a IT academy, like I've had some opportunities along the way to make those connections, and there's a lot of things that are free that you don't think about. And actually, Kelly right here is one of the ones that pointed that out to me, and then Ronnie did too. It's like, how did you get to where you were? And you start listing those things out, not everything costs money. In fact, a lot of this is free. It's just knowing who to contact.
But you're compiling that list, right?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Comments? Questions? Well, we thank you so much. We appreciate all this hard work. I can't wait to find out what you come up with. Any objections? Next item.
Your next item is on page 31, item 4.1, consideration of revisions to Bulletin 746, Louisiana Standards for State Certification of School Personnel regarding certification of school nurse and licensed nursing support staff. The department recommendation is to approve as a notice of intent. An updated exec rec and backup has been distributed.
Motion, Dr. Bogie. Second, Mr. Mellerin. Any comment?
Yeah, so this is an item that Mr. Garvey actually brought to our attention several months back around the need to have more supply for school nurses, for our HR directors and systems to be able to hire. There was also a question around the need and the present requirements for some of the expectations that an individual has to hold. Particularly, what came into play was the 2-year requirement that in order to be a certified school nurse, one had to hold 2 years of experience as a nurse. As we worked through that process, a additional thought came into being, which was we would create a new certification category that would be basically a support nurse, which could be potentially an LPN. But even if we did that, the ratio of 1 RN per every 1,500 students still remained. So if a school system wanted to hire additional LPNs, for instance, they could already do that so long as they have an RN per every 1,500 students. So as we started thinking about that, it just brought to my attention the fact that I think that local system leaders, local HR directors, can be placed in a position here to hire the nursing staff that they believe best fit the needs for their school. And furthermore, I think that we can deregulate this entire process if the board would so choose. And so our revised recommendation simply takes out the requirements that previously existed, and it's very simple. And it just says, beginning in August of 2023, a registered nurse on RN who holds a current valid license in good standing with the Louisiana State Nursing Board is considered certified by BESI. And so there's no reason to have all of these additional requirements and renewals so long as the person is a licensed RN in good standing with the nursing board. As we were considering this policy, I went to the State Nursing Board website and I said, I asked staff, give me the name of the nurse. And I just typed it in. And you can look right there immediately and tell if the nurse is in good standing. So if this were approved and a school system is trying to hire a new school nurse, the HR director could simply go into the State Board of Nursing's website, look to see if the applicant is in good standing, is licensed as an RN in the state of Louisiana, and they could go ahead and employ them. And BESI would then be certified because the State Nursing Board, which is the board that should be considering certification of nurses, has already done that. So what we are doing at present is we are taking the fee from an applicant, and we're going through a processing standpoint, and we're checking to see if the State Nursing Board said they have a license and are they in good standing. And so it's just duplicative in terms of government. And so what our approach would be is to just say, you know what, if these individuals are certified with the license by the State Nursing Board, they could be deemed as certified by BESI, and we could eliminate a lot of the steps and make this a simpler process.
Comments from the board? We do have some comment cards.
I like the idea of shortening the line in the queue as well. Thank you.
Dr. Davis.
So I'm sure that many of you also got emails surrounding this particular policy change. And the emails that I read seemed to think that, I guess this change was portrayed as weakening the qualifications to be able to serve students, and that there was concern that it might be endangering students. But as I read the policy, right, so they still have to have a registered nurse, and if they're a practical nurse, they are operating under the supervision of that registered nurse that is still required for the 1,500 students, right? So they have to have the registered nurse before they can hire a practical nurse.
Yeah, so you have to have 1 RN per 1,500 students. So like if
Not changing.
not changing that.
Okay.
Ms. Boucher?
So you're saying districts still have to send it in to get a type C? Or are you saying?
No, we're saying that if a person is a RN licensed by the state nursing board, they should automatically be considered certified by the board
Okay.
without further application.
All right, well then when I'm looking at a policy, I guess, the way I read it, it says to be a type C school nurse valid for 3 years.
She had the original, she had the new.
Oh, yeah, I knew one was provided, yeah, it takes out all that language.
Yes.
So as long as we check that they're an RN, that's it.
Any more board comments?
To clarify, it's the question I had that with, we enter the certificate numbers, a previous question, into the PEP. The school systems enter their certificate numbers into the PEP report, and I think that's kind of where you were going.
Yeah.
So I asked, what are we going to do for that? When I saw that the change in the department, Beth said that there's a way to enter their license, their nursing license number, like we do for occupational therapists. So that's going to be some information that will need to be compiled and a new number given, type of number given as opposed to the teaching certificate themselves.
Yeah, and we'll provide guidance, to support systems on this as if the change happens.
Convictions, like how many convictions? You had a question about felony? Oh, I'm sorry.
Is there the intent to look at any other, like ancillary certificates or social workers, psychologists, these other people who are certified, who are licensed by their licensing boards, and then go through our process as well?
I think that's a really good idea that you had, Superintendent Boucher, and we'll be doing some of that.
So can you look at all of those types of individuals who are licensed by other agencies?
We would be happy to do that.
And there's a question about, can we track them for felony convictions?
Are we still going to be able to track them, Kate, for their convictions?
Yeah, they still have to have, the local system's still going to have to do their background check.
But for their licenses, though? I think the nursing board does that.
Any more discussion from the board? Comments? Okay, we have a couple of cards. Brian Davis from the Louisiana Association of Business and Industry, LAB, does not wish to speak, but he supports this. Sylvia Guidry Brown, can come on down if you're here. And also Bruce Chapin from Livingston Parish Public Schools wishes to speak, and then we'll get Nicole Scott and Kristen Grandy in the queue. Okay?
Good afternoon, board, to state superintendent. My name is Sylvia Guidry Brown. I am a nursing supervisor with St. Andrew Parish School Board System. I'm over public school nurses, Head Start nurses. I'm a IEP. I work with pupil appraisal as an examiner and also I'm a family nurse practitioner. When we talk about the certification for school nurses, that 2-year requirement, that pretty much, we're talking about school districts that do not have a nurse as their supervisor. We're talking about a novice nurse coming into a school setting that has students with complex medical needs to make critical decisions on children. In the school setting, we have diabetics. We could have anywhere from 5 to 6 diabetics in school systems. If you take a chance, look at a diabetic order, you have 6 or 7 students to see about, along with asthma, children that come in with acute injuries, children that come in with acute illnesses, for a novice nurse to make a decision on how I'm going to manage care. Along with that, we also have our nurses being part of the IEP process. So we have that going on with our nurses. We do not have what we consider a school nurse orientation like we have for our teachers. I heard we have a mentor shift for our teachers. We have a lot of resources there for our children. School nurses do not have that resource in the school setting. They literally do not have the resources in the school setting. Nurses like myself and like some others that probably will come up and speak, we are advocates. So we make sure that our nurses get what they need in our school setting, but however, I speak to a lot of school nurses across Louisiana that do not have that opportunity. They look and seek for resources. So if we're talking about a nurse that is experienced, that do not have those resources, what do you think about a novice nurse coming in straight from college into a school setting? I urge that you give caution when we talk about removing those requirements, those clinical requirements for a school nurse to come into the school setting. You have to be ready. Is a disconnect that they think school nurses are in those schools just putting Band-Aids on, those types of things. School nurses are working every single day in their schools. I'll leave you with two things. Student lives matter, and support the school nurse for success and for retention in our schools.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman.
Good afternoon, Good afternoon, Dr. Bowman, committee members, and others. My name is Bruce Chafin. I'm Assistant Superintendent, Livingston Parish Public Schools, and I also represent the Louisiana Association of School Personnel Administrators. I'm here to support these proposed changes to nursing certification, but please note that I said state certification. This proposed change has nothing to do with the licensure process. We are not in the business of telling medical professionals what should constitute a school nurse license, whether that be an LPN or an RN. We are asking to remedy a situation that creates a hardship for us in the school systems from promoting with our own ranks. In certification, you've heard it mentioned here today in some of the comments, the Louisiana Department of Education is promoting grow your own. We have a current situation in our district, and I brought one of our school nurses here, Ms. Kim, if you'll stand up for me. Ms. Kim is one of our LPNs. She has worked for us for 12 years. She went above and beyond as a part of us wanting to see our own people recruited, and went back and got her RN license. But because of this restriction, she is certified, licensed by the state board to be an RN. She could go and work in any hospital today. As an RN, we cannot continue to pay her as an RN because this licensure restriction of 2 years of outside experience. The only way she can do that is if she quits, go work in a hospital for 2 years, and comes back. Why would we want to lose one of the best employees in the nursing field that we have just because of this certification issue? There would be no guarantee she would get that job back. Our school nurses were heroes during COVID. We needed every single one of them in our schools. We don't want to lose them. We want to see more of our LPNs work toward becoming fully certified as an RN where we can hire them. We want this restriction being removed does not keep a local district from going in and adding restrictions to their hiring process. In other words, if this goes away, there's nothing keeping us in Livingston from instituting our own policies if we choose to do so. That is left up to the individual district. My biggest fear that if we cannot continue to pay her RN pay, we're going to lose her and lose her quickly. Again, we ask that you support this proposal as presented here today and remove that 2-year exemption. Any questions?
Thank you. Mr. Garvey?
Yeah, the question I was going to make a second ago was just addressed here, but I would like to have the superintendent confirm this. If we were to approve this, this would not stop a local school district if they have an unusual medical condition with some of the students. It would not prohibit them from adding requirements to the job position that they fill, would it?
That's right.
Thank you.
If I may, just real quickly, I want to thank this board, Dr. Brumley, LDOE, all of the discussions that are taking place here tonight. I happen to sit on the task force. There's a lot of discussion. Thank you for the discussion. The only way we're going to solve the issues where we're at is to bring light to these issues. But as frustrating as it is from a personnel standpoint and now a district leadership position, we didn't get here overnight. We're not going to fix these problems overnight. I love serving on the task force. There's a lot of things. We built this huge elephant. Now we've got to bite parts of it off a little bit at a time. But I'm here to say thank you for openly having these discussions. Because as we know in our district and in every district in this state, the quality of education that a child receives is based on the quality of the educator in that classroom. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole Scott? Representing health centers in schools. I'm not sure what that is, OLOL, if you can explain. And then next up is Kristen Grandney.
Good afternoon. My name is Nicole Scott. I'm the Director of Clinical Services for Healthcare Centers and Schools. We currently staff the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board or school district rather, with their school nurses and school health assistants. The reason why I'm here today is to support this in a way from a person that's actually having to hire nurses and having some of the same struggles that we just heard about a moment ago. We do have an LPN that wants to go back to school to be an RN, and we were going to face the same situation that Ms. McHugh just spoke about. Also, having a 2-year requirement does not guarantee that we have a nurse that is qualified to do this work. It is a lot of work. The students do have a lot of high acuity type situations, as discussed before, with diabetes, asthma, etc. However, the 2-year requirement only requires that they're an RN and not that they've worked with pediatrics or anything like that. And so, we still have to be cognizant when we do our hiring to make sure that these people, these nurses have the requirements that we need. So even with that 2 years, it really doesn't guarantee it's not getting a good employee. And also, I do support growing our own. Anybody that wants to come into this field and take care of our children is somebody that I want to grab immediately and teach them how to take care of our children. I don't want to discourage somebody, have them to go work someplace else for 2 years, and then we lose them because, well, one, we can't afford to pay them. There's that, and then two, they've probably gotten their feet wet, grounded where they are, and it's kind of hard to get them back then. So that's my take on, why this is important for us from a professional standpoint, from someone that hires and trains nurse leaders as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Kristen Gradney. I work with Our Lady of the Lake, Healthcare Centers and Schools, and also pediatrics. I support specialty programs and outpatient therapy. And I've been in healthcare for about 9 years and as an administrator. And really the focus of the work that we do are to care for those that are most vulnerable. And we do that in healthcare across populations. And for us, what we've recognized is that there are more hurdles to become a school nurse than anywhere else. Today, you can become a nurse in the ICU, the NICU, the OR, the ER, or a physician clinic straight out of school. And I don't want us to continue to feel like straight out of school is a 19-year-old who has no world experience. This is someone who has completed their educational requirements, passed the NCLEX exam, and also done clinicals. So when they come to us, it is up to us to provide them with the individual training that they need in our districts and in our schools. Every district is going to have a different requirement. Some of us have paper documentation, some have electronic, so it is up to each individual district to provide those nurses with what they need. So I really am grateful to you all for bringing this up and for bringing up the fact that we want to increase the pipeline of nurses coming into our schools because we have kids who really need them. And if we don't do that, we'll start to see a decline. We knew that 61% of RNs in Louisiana were over the age of 50 last year, so that means a large population retiring. And if we don't have a strong pipeline of new nurses coming in, we will find ourselves hiring unlicensed personnel to take care of kids as opposed to having an RN who at least has educational requirements and a certification and a whole governing board. So I thank you all today and really appreciate your consideration.
Dr. Murphy?
So one of the things built into our system as it is now are periodic background checks. And I just like if you guys could talk us through how nurses have to update their license and whether or not there are background checks involved in it.
Yes, and yes. We have to update our license every 2 years. I just did mine. And there's an extensive amount of questions that they ask, and the Louisiana State Board of Nursing specifically is very good about going back and making sure that we don't have any criminal backgrounds and things like that. We are attesting when we do our renew our license that we haven't made any, big mistakes over the course of the 2 years that, the past 2 years. So.
And then are there required education, like further education as part of it as well? Okay.
So,
we CMUs, do y'all call them CMUs?
CEUs?
Yes, okay.
CMUs is for the positions.
Okay.
So yes, we do have CEUs. And then if there's like a specialty that we're in, we can, there's always more CEUs that you can do. Different organizations sometimes require. Again, that would be on the, responsibility of whoever is hiring, if they want to add that requirement to do more CEUs in that area. That's totally, I would think would be favorable. And then there's also the certification, the actual school nurse certification, not the one we're speaking of today.
Okay.
So, continue.
Any other questions? No? Thank you. All right, next up, Gavin Bitter, Tangipahoa Parish School Board, and Susan DuPont, an RN for Louisiana School Nurse.
Good afternoon. My name is Gavin Bitter. I'm the Director of Human Resources for the Tangipahoa Parish School System. I'm here in support of the policy revisions as presented. Where Mr. Chapin's situation shows you where one of his employees can go from an LPN to an RN, but might not be able to pay correctly or adequately for because of this 2-year requirement. I want to give you a snapshot of how it affects us as HR directors on the application and recruitment side. So from August of 2020 to July of 2022, Tangipahoa Parish School System advertised on 3 separate occasions for job postings for RNs and LPNs, either at specific school locations or as a general pool to gather applicants. Of the applications received, they were all certified and licensed by the Louisiana State Board of Nursing. But 31% of those applicants were not eligible because of this 2-year requirement. In a school system the size of Tangipahoa, and we have a lot of schools that are in our rural areas, 31% of eligible applicants is significant. And we couldn't bring on to our school system to provide medical assistance and services to our students. Approving the revisions to this policy for the school nurses and licensed nursing staff as presented will provide our school systems with a pathway to increase our nursing applicants, provide our nurse mentorship for our LPNs, and provide opportunities for increasing our medical nursing staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Susan DuPont.
Good afternoon. I am currently the district school health administrator for the Tangipahoa Parish School Board. I'm an RN, and I also have been serving on the Louisiana School Nurse Advisory Committee since the inception of it. Actually, I think I was probably the reason it was created. Because when I came on board in 2008, I started looking for documents to show what exactly a school nurse was doing in the school system. I was hired, I ran the public health unit in Cameron Parish for 16 and a half years before I changed roles. And with that being said, we have developed and I'm one of the co-authors on the Louisiana League's school nurse handbook for administrators that's on our website. We have differencing views on our committee about whether or not the certification process should have been moved with, do away with the 2-year for a school nurse. My view, I am a very small school district. We have less than 1,400 students, but I have a problem with logistics. I cannot physically be at one school and make it all the way around on Ferries Road in Cameron. It takes me 2 hours and 15 minutes to get there, just based off of that. And in one of my most remote schools, which was across the ferry from me, I had a child with a trach. That child would take that trach out, and somebody else would have to put it in. So, all nurses are required by the State Board of Nursing to renew their license. They do random background checks on every licensed nurse in the state. They also will send you a lovely letter if you've done something wrong and you have not notified them directly of something that you have done, and say that you got arrested for something, and it comes up on your background check. So they're diligently doing this. They are probably one of the hardest standards in the state that our State Board of Nursing does not play, and that's any of them. We have a nursing shortage throughout the United States. COVID has made it worse. You've seen the work that the nurses do in your schools districts directly, and how our roles have changed and our hats have changed. I could not have done it without the LPNs that I have hired, and I could not have done it with the RNs that I have hired. I actually, when I came to work in 2008, had to retrain nurses with years of experience coming from the hospital setting. They were all hired about 5 months before me, and that's one of the reasons why I was asked to come in. They created this position, was to write policies and procedures, because these nurses were doing things that a school nurse is not supposed to do, and there was no direction from them directly. So I had to retrain these nurses with years of experience. So having years of experience coming from the hospital setting doesn't necessarily mean that you're qualified as a school nurse, is my point.
All right, thank you. We have another comment card. She wishes to speak, but I don't see her here. Dr. Erin Findley, she's in support of the recommendation. All right, any other comments? Any opposition? Motion carries. Next item.
Your next item is on page 33. Item 5.1, consideration of executive session regarding discussion of the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of a person. The recommendation is to convene executive session to discuss Ms. Candy Compagnon.
All right. Can I get a motion to go into executive session? Dr. Murphy and Dr. Davis. All right, in order for this motion to pass, 2/3 affirmative vote of members present is required. May I have a roll call, please? Am I right?
Dr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Castillo?
Yes.
Dr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Ellis? Yes. Mr. Garvey?
Yes.
Ms. Holloway?
Yes.
Mr. Melred?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes.
Ms. Orange Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Rock? Ms. Boucher?
I will advise the audience that we will be in executive session for the length of time necessary for the discussion. No votes will be taken while the board is in executive session. All votes will be made in public. Additionally, public disclosure is not required of matters discussed in a properly held executive session. At this time, the board meeting stands in recess to go into executive session. Motion to reconvene the board meeting and continue with the regular order of the agenda to vote on the items. Thank you. Motion by Dr. Boki and Mr. Garvey, seconded. Next item.
The next item is on page 34, item 5.2, consideration of a records review regarding the issuance of a Louisiana teaching credential appropriate to the credentials of Ms. Candy Campagna. The recommendation is to grant, deny, or defer.
Can I get a motion? Motion to grant, second by Dr. Davis. Any comments, discussion, any opposition? Motion carries. Next item.
That concludes the agenda.
Let's do it 5 minutes. 2 minutes.
2 minutes. 2 minutes per se.
2 minutes, and we will return.
2 minutes.
4 minutes.